Welcome back to the OWNR Operator Podcast. I'm your host, Austin Gray, and in this episode, I'm hosting Garrett Williams again. Garrett is from G&M Outdoor Services up in Minnesota. They do excavation, landscaping, and snow removal. Garrett and his sister have built this business from zero all the way up to about $5 million in revenues. We had him on the podcast earlier. It's one of the earlier episodes, so if you haven't listened to that one, go check it out after you listen to this episode because we get into his story and kind of how he built the business. In this episode, we're going to go over some more specifics related to, well, I was asking him questions related to sort of like where we're at in growth phase. So last year we did about $650K of revenue. We're looking to break the million mark this year. And so I wanted to pick his brain on, hey, how do you think about delegation? How do you think about roles and responsibilities? Org chart, who needs to be where, what roles do they need to be handling in order to grow? We also get into, at the end of the episode, a crash course on excavation bidding. Garrett kind of runs us through how they think about overhead and how they build that out on each of their projects to maintain profitability so that they have a healthy company moving forward. This one was a fun one, so stick around for the whole episode. If you like this kind of stuff, please make sure to like and subscribe if you're listening on YouTube. Like, follow, and leave us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple. Without further ado, let's jump into the episode. Real quick, wanted to share with you two agency partners who have helped me grow Bear Claw Land Services. Striker Digital manages all of our SEO services, and they've got us to #1 on Google for specific search terms within our local service business. Cedar Digital Consulting manages all of our social media and YouTube, and they make it very simple for owner-operators like myself. All I have to do is go take photos and videos in the field, upload those on my phone to a shared iCloud album very quickly, and they handle everything else from there. They edit and they publish. I don't have to worry about it. I can focus on growing my business. So if you're looking for SEO services, check out Striker Digital. That's Striker, STRYKER -digital.com. And for social media, check out Cedar Digital Consulting. That's CEDAR digitalconsulting.com.
So for us, it was really easy because I wasn't at first, I used to be afraid to talk to people, and I'd be nervous to talk to people for no reason. So I learned early on, I have to be able to become more outgoing, more personable. So I just started talking to everyone everywhere I went. And after a year, I got to a point where I enjoyed it. So for us, for delegating certain tasks when we started, it was really easy because Marlena's a whiz at anything paperwork, any permits, any tax stuff, insurance, payroll. She's had 7-8 years experience doing that for other large construction companies. And Marlena's the best thing about her is her attitude. She has the get it done, figure it out, no matter what attitude. So that's naturally what she does. Anything we come up to, it's we don't know what we're doing here. We don't, we weren't business, we weren't entrepreneurial experts when we started. We didn't know anything. We just started out, and every time we came to an obstacle, figure out what we had to do to overcome it and then move on. So it was easy for us because I was always outgoing. I'm obsessed with the work and the field work, talking with customers, lining stuff up, figuring out issues on the job. So if she was another me, it would have been really tough because then we would have always been trying to do things, button heads going back and forth. But I've always been kind of the front, and she's been, I've always been the front of the house. She's been the back, and without both, you got nothing. But it was easy for us just because of our personalities and the experience that we had. I had all the field experience and managing the guys and that outgoing sales more, where she's more she'd rather send you an email than talk to you in person. That's just how she is. She if we still go do lunches and whatever, but if she could pick what she had to do, she'd rather send you an email. Well, I would way rather not send you an email, and I'd rather just call you. So it just worked out good for us that way, I think. And that is key if you're going to have a partner, is to try to find someone that's basically really good at everything you're not. And that's kind of how we are. I like doing the stuff she doesn't like doing, and vice versa. So it works good.
Yeah. And whenever you brought your brother on, what were the responsibilities you immediately gave to him?
So he was in the field for 3 years, I think, doing the work, foreman basically. And then he got to a point where he's I love the work, but I don't really want to run, the same machine for the rest of my career. So, and then we were to the size kind of where we needed someone just to do operations, which is do a walk around with the guys on the job in the morning, show them everything they need. And then, so basically he gets the foreman on site. everything he needs from equipment to material. If we gotta get something moved, we gotta call another contractor and we gotta move a gas line or something, then like whole line that up. Basically, it's his responsibility to take the job from start to finish, and then do a walkthrough with the customer when they're done, make sure they're satisfied, and then usually gets the residential job gets paid then, and then if there's any issues, like he'll resolve them with the customer, with the foreman. So he just like basically gets the work done. And he started, he started with us. We started in July of 2017, and then he started working with us in spring 2018, and then it was like 21 where he started doing pretty much just operations. And then he's always been here. He's always worked really hard. So he became 20% owner January 1st of 23, I think.
Did you grant equity, or did he have to buy in?
We basically gifted it, but with conditions of like he can't sell it. If he ever wanted to move on, he would basically have to give it back. There's a million ways you can draw something like that up, like on your operating agreement and stuff. So we drew it to where it worked for us.
Cool. Last question here on organizational structure, and the reason I'm asking this is because we're putting some hires in place right now, and our business is very similar to yours. It's project based. You've got field operations, you've got office tasks, you've got sales and estimating. So can you give me like a quick rundown of your current organizational structure, meaning who are the key leaders and what are their like 1, 2, maybe 3 like main responsibilities?
Yep. So I think there's always you always gotta have a job description for each employee, and you gotta have detailed responsibilities. Like you said, you can't have 10 people doing one thing and everyone just assuming everyone else is doing everything. You gotta have very specific, hey, your responsibility is to get this done every day, and this by the end of the week, whatever, certain tasks. But I think like certain times, if you do like, I think job titles, some people like a big job title, I'm CFO, I'm what I think like we try not to be too strict with that, or like that's not my job, like we don't do that. We're all here to get the work done. If the guys in the field have questions about the project or the scope of work, the sales guy's going to go out there and explain to him or figure out any questions. It's not like once he sells it, he's never going to touch that job again. I always tell him, if you do your job right, if you do everything good, you won't need to, but there's certain times things come up. But so basically what we have is me, Marlena, Jay, as partial owners. Jameson basically does all the operations. If there's a quick, easy change order, he'll do that. With they're already on a job and they want to add the 20 feet to the wall, so he'll go out there and $2,000, type it up and make sure it gets approved before we do the work. And then Marlena is in the office, primarily in the office, and then she handles everything back end with insurance, taxes, payroll, not much operations, a little bit, not a ton. And then I do what needs to be done. I do some sales with people I've known and worked with kind of from the beginning. It depends on kind of my schedule and how much stuff I have going on. I absolutely love working in the field. If I can go work on a job for a day, it's like a day off. It's like a vacation, but I'd never get to hardly, rarely. And like me working in the field now, it isn't really the best spent of my time because there's so much more I can be doing. I can be reaching out to customers. I can be nourishing relationships we have with large general contractors. Like it's not the best thing for the business, but it's kind of the best thing for me, if that makes sense. So I do a little bit of it, not a ton. But yeah, and then kind of just keeping, I'm kind of the very tip of the sphere. So just keeping things going forward, and whatever needs to be done, whatever's struggling, whatever's lacking, is picking up that slack, wherever that is that day. So like I was saying earlier, I am very fortunate to not be in a position where I have to be here 10 hours a day. And if I do anything different, then I have to do it after hours. Like I kind of do what I need and want to do throughout the day. So that's kind of where we're at. And then we have 2 sales guys. And like you were saying, you're considering, or you hired a guy to do sales. And what we did is, once I got to a point of where I was just buried in meetings, trying to do 4 or 5 meetings a day, plus 5 other things, plus some operations and everything, where I was doing a full-time sales job, plus trying to do a bunch of other stuff, which it worked for a little bit, but I'm like, I can't do this forever. So we interviewed 3, 4 estimators, hired one. We were super fortunate. He's an absolute gem. His name's Michael. He'll work literally around the clock, 7 days a week when he needs to. Very teachable, very, very, lots of integrity, great guy. So I spent 3 months training him. And now what works really good, and this is what I was going to recommend to you, is teach him everything you know about sales, and then let him, like, he does 95% of the work. Once he has the quote all in and done, then I'll just go through and spend 5 minutes and just go through everything, make sure I didn't miss anything, make sure it all looks good. So instead of me spending 3 hours on that, now he spends 3 hours on it and I spend 5 minutes, and we're quote 7, 8 jobs a day now, and I'm only spending half an hour on them, and he's putting all the time. Like that's where I think, like, next step for you is let him do all the work and you just double check it and make sure it's good. And it's how you would do it, you know what I mean? But you didn't spend 3 hours on it. You only spent 15 minutes. So like that's been huge. That was a big step. And now actually this spring, he's having to work too much to keep up. Like he's having to work till 8, 10 p.m. every day, which he does. I'm like, Michael, I don't know if you're able to do this forever. If you ever start a family, like he does it, he loves it, but we have another work for another estimator. So we've been training a guy over the winter. His name's Dan. He's really good. He's been getting into more sales. So now this year, him and Michael are kind of tag teaming everything. He's getting trained in, and then this year we'll have Michael and Dan doing. They'll both be doing full-time sales. So we have the work and the capacity and the amount of lead stuff coming in to keep them both busy at least 50 hours a week. So that's kind of what we've always done, is get enough work for that. That's what we do. I don't know, there's a million ways to do it, but get enough work for that position, at least like 30 hours a week for it, and then hire it, and then bam, off they go. Because you don't want them standing around having to look for things to do. But
yeah,
that's how we've done
it. What kind of compensation have you set up for sales and estimators? Is it base salary plus commission?
I've talked to a lot of different people on this, and everyone seems to do it a little different. It depends a lot on the employee and what they want to do. And our business is super seasonal. Our busy season is like this year will be March to, through October, maybe a little November. Once you get to October, the bidding starts slowing down because you don't have much time to do more work that year. There's still some going on, but busy bidding season is like March to October. So yeah, I know some people are all commission, some people are just salary with whatever, but what we've done and what's worked for us is a base salary. It's like, I think it's around, depending on what you're doing, like 50,000 a year, 60,000 base salary, and then 1% commission on commercial jobs. Big jobs, they're going off the plan. It's 100, 200, 300,000. They spend a day on it. And then 3% on like residential or some builder stuff. So it works. They have the base salary kind of for the winter, and then the commission for so the other like residential stuff. And how that works is, on our quotes, when someone signs and approves, they make a 25% deposit on, say, a residential job. And after 14 days, that deposit is non-refundable. If it's like a life situation and something drastic happens, we'll give the deposit back. But after 14 days, technically, then it's non-refundable. So then once they sign and approve, make the deposit, after that 14 days, then they get their 3% commission.
So you pay it out after the deposit is paid. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's on.
What's that?
Go ahead.
I know some companies, I was just talking to a concrete company, where they do commission based off what the profit margin is on the job. Once the job's complete, we did 30%, so they get 10% of that or whatever. And we thought about doing that, and it probably works. But our thing is, how it is, if it rains, say it rains, and then everything's muddy, and the guys, you work a half day, and it ends up taking longer, and you end up doing less. Like, there's things that happen in operations that is completely out of the estimator's control that could drive the margin down. That's not really on them. It's not their fault that it rained and that the guy, at the blew a hydraulic hose. How stuff happens, and you just don't do as well as you'd like to on the job. Say you shoot for 30 and end up being 10. So it's not really, their fault, I guess. So that's kind of why we've always just stuck with a percentage of the overall job versus like a higher percentage of the profit. Because you don't want them bidding work for cheap just to get it, and they're getting a ton of commission, and then you're doing the work and it's tight. So, it has to be that happy medium. They got to be getting the work for what you need it for and what it's worth, which is why, you want to double check the quotes, but you want to have a really good structure for them. We've spent years developing a spreadsheet that has everything we need on how we bid everything. So they're not guessing anything. They're not hoping for the best. They have everything broken down to the biggest variable is time, with how long it's going to take, because our labor is more expensive than anything else. So we have it very broken down though, to where it's easy for them to bid it 2 days. Okay, it's that much in labor, and then they have the material, 30% markup on the material on residential, 10% on commercial, and we have it very laid out to where it's not rocket science. Like just about anyone could learn it. The biggest piece is being personable, being able to talk to people, and then keeping up really good communication. People have questions, getting back to them right away, getting quotes turned and burned, getting them done. So that's the biggest thing.
Cool. All right. We're at the half-hour mark here. So thank you for sharing that. Can we jump into excavation bidding?
Sure.
Okay.
So I want to kind of give you a little background on bidding. I started really young doing the work. Like, from when I had, when we started this company, I had about 7 years of in-field hands-on experience. So like, I knew how to do the work. I knew how to run the excavator. I knew how to run skid loader. I knew how to work with my hands. I knew how to build stuff. I knew how to tear stuff apart. But I didn't know anything about bidding, because I never did any bidding. I was never given that role. I was never, when I was young, I was like, I didn't really care. I was like, I just loved doing the work. I'd work 12 hours a day and I loved every second of it. So I didn't know anything about bidding. So when we started, I had to figure it all out on my own, which I watched a ton of videos. I asked a ton of other companies on how they do it, and I didn't have a single clue about how to bid a job. I knew how to do the job. I didn't know how to bid it. So I lost a lot of money learning how to bid. Lost a ton of money. Like, people say, like, oh, my college, education was 50 grand. It's like, my education of doing this in the field was like 500 grand on how much I lost. No, it wasn't that much. But the key thing is job costing. Is you have to, okay, I bid a job. I think it's going to take 2 days. It's 10 grand. I go do the job, and if I don't job cost it very close, I have no clue how it went. You try to run the numbers in your head, and okay, that was that. I think we did pretty good. No, you have to have it all on paper. You have to have every expense categorized to know, because if you don't know what you actually did, then you have no idea what to bid the next one. If I go job cost this one, okay, everything went good, but it was still like 8%. I want to be at 20. Well, then, okay, I got to raise my labor. I got to do something here. So if you're not job costing, personally, it's my opinion, but if you're not tightly job costing, you're never going to be able to bid accurately, because you don't really know what the stuff's costing. You don't know. Everything adds up, and you can't keep track of it all in your head. I guarantee it. I thought, okay, this or that. I thought, oh, this looks good. And then Marlena would put it all on paper. Here's our cost. And I would always try to look and see if she had something on there that wasn't on the job. And no, they're always accurate. And I would like, okay, this or that. And then, for a while, they weren't as good as what we hoped. So I basically had to figure out estimating by trial and error and by bidding thousands of jobs. We were on, I think, like 900 and some jobs last year, and we had about a 15% close rate. So it would bid 4,000 jobs a year. The last probably 3 years, and before that it's a little less, but so a ton of bidding. But basically what I learned is do job costing, and then figure out your overhead is huge. We break everything. We don't do stuff by the hour, because there's only so many billable hours in a day. If your crew works 10 hours, you don't have 10 hours of billable time unless they meet at the job and leave. But that usually doesn't happen. They meet at the shop, or they have to go pick stuff up, or a machine breaks down. Now you're not getting billable hours. So we do everything by the day. It's just how we do it. So we break stuff up by how many working days in a year, and that's how you have to cover your overhead. So figuring out your overhead is key. We didn't make any money until we figured out our overhead. Our first year, I think I made a video on this a while ago. Like, our first year, we got to the end of the year, we had no money. The bills were barely paid. We got to winter, had no money. We're like, where'd all our money go? We did 260,000. And I'm like, well, I don't know, but it's not in our bank account. We're going to win somewhere. Because we didn't do any job costing. I was still learning how to bid. We weren't doing job costing. I was kind of I had the whole thing in my head, and it was just like, you can't, that doesn't work. It has to be on paper. You have to be able to track it. You have to, if someone asks me, what was your percentage on a job? And if you don't have a sheet showing job was 10,000 and we had this, and this and that expense, then you don't really know. You're kind of just guessing. And that's what we did. So then that winter, after our first year, then we really, okay, we got to figure something out. There's no point in you being in business, just getting to the end of the year with no money. And that's how I think a lot of companies are. honestly. There's some that figured it out, but there's a lot that just haven't. They're just so busy doing the work and with other things, they don't really sit down and take the time to figure out their overhead and what they actually need to charge. And then a lot of it's in your head too. You think, oh, no way that someone's ever going to pay for that. I'm sure you've dealt with that. You type a bid and you put it all together, like, man, 80 grand for this backyard wall. Like, who's going to spend that? And you send it and they don't even ask a question and they approve it and it's all great. And then you get out there and they add another 10, 20 grand. Like, that stuff happens. It's all in your head. You have to basically, I tell our sales guys, you have to not worry about how much money the customer does or doesn't have. You have to just give them a number that we need to make money, and they have it or they don't, whatever. Like, the work is out there. People have way more money than you'd ever imagine, and people want to spend it with you. It's like, you do a good job, you have great communication, you have integrity, you stand behind your work, like, you'll get jobs that you never thought possible. Like, we have people spend $200,000 in their yard on stuff they don't need. It's like, who'd ever thought? But people do. So that's what we've done. Figure out your overhead, and then we break it all down by the day. And then material, I'd say, is probably the easiest thing, depending on the job. But after you're measuring your material, always adding like 10% overages for some scrap, some throwaway, whether it's pipe, whether it's boulders, whatever. And then breaking it down, figuring out your labor cost per day and then overhead, and then putting it all together. We shoot for most jobs. We shoot for like 25 to 30%. Sometimes it goes down to, you do the job, your job costs. Sometimes you only end up doing 10, sometimes you do 40. But overall, last year we averaged like 17% on everything. If you take an average on everything, like at the end of the year, we were 17% profit. That's net after all the bills are paid, overhead, insurance, everything said and done is 17%. I don't really like people say, oh, we had, $1 million gross profit. To me, that doesn't make any sense, because who knows what your bills are? You might have ridiculously high insurance because you have crazy drivers, and then you had $1 million gross, but you only actually took home 100. Like, I don't really care about gross profit. What do you make after all the bills are paid? Not, before all the overhead expenses are paid. What's your net? That, to me, that's what matters.
Yes, agreed on that. So you were 17% net profit after all your overhead was paid out.
Yep. Yeah, that's everything said and done. I mean, like to throw a gross number doesn't make sense, because no one knows what your bills are. You probably don't even know what all your overhead bills are if you don't have it well tracked. So, like, yeah, it's net. And so we shoot for like 25, but some commercial jobs, if they're really competitive, 10, 15%. We try to never go below 10. Even 10 is cutting it. If anything goes wrong, it takes a little longer. It ends up at 5, and it's not even worth it. No job is worth doing for free.
Yeah, for sure. When you say, when you just throw out the numbers 25 to 30%, are you stating that after your labor and material is paid, you're shooting for 30% on top of that to cover your overhead and then have a net profit of 17%?
No, so we shoot. The goal is to have net 30 on everything. After labor, overhead, material, everything is paid for, and that's basically like best case scenario. You always, when you quote a job, you kind of envision the whole job in your head. Like, hey, I need this material, I'm gonna need that equipment. It's gonna take me 4 days, and then you get out there, and then then stuff comes up, and you do your best, and you work a little longer days to get it done in that amount of days. But best case scenario on every job, everything goes perfect, we make 30%. And some we do, some we make 30, some we make 40. Sometimes everything just goes perfect, seamlessly. Everything, guys work hard, they work quick. The end result is perfect. We get paid right away, and we make 45%. Sometimes that happens. And other ones, you have a rain day, or 2 hydraulic lines broken, and it costs them 2 hours or 3 hours by the time they got them fixed. And then, it gets really dusty and had to sweep the road multiple times, and then it ends up being 10%. So there's so many variables in this industry. When you go build a boulder wall, or you go do excavation on a new bank, there's so many variables. It's unreal. There's traffic's busy and the trucks are slower that day, or happens to be an event right next door and there's just people everywhere and everything takes 5 times longer. Like, that stuff happens all the time in the real world, and you just got to figure it out. You got to roll with it. And those are the variables of those little things. I don't go back to the customer and say, hey, this or that, we got to charge you more. Everything we do is lump sum. We say we're going to do X for X price, and that's what we do. So it sometimes it works great, sometimes it doesn't. It's kind of the nature of the beast.
And in my experience, people people hate whenever you're giving them an open-ended budget on I know some guys specifically in the land clearing, like forestry mulching industry, just charge an hourly rate. Nobody wants to know an hourly rate. And if you said we're going to for $300 an hour, it's like people start crapping their pants anyway.
Yeah.
$300 an hour is expensive to most people. And then whenever you can't give them an exact timeline, look, we tried that a little bit at the beginning, but like lump sum has worked well for us as well. Okay, so have you defined your overhead as a percentage yet?
Yeah, so there's a chart that I seen that was really good. It's like your labor, so like your material should never be more than, I think your material should never be more than 33. Say you do $1 million. Well, I mean, this so depends on the industry, because I know some industries that are so material heavy, and then others more like service. If you're just like trimming trees, you don't have a ton of material. You have some dump fees and you have your equipment. You don't have, 10 loads of boulders there. So it's like there's no perfect sequence for every business. That doesn't exist. I think it's more of like business dependent, where it's like what we do. Like there's a pool company, and like they started right away and did a couple million, but they had like 5% profit because the pool alone, $100,000 job, the pool alone was 50, and then the concrete was 15. And so like there's so much material, and everything's like there's little labor and so much material. So like that percentage is just so irrelevant. Like they're like 60% material and little labor. It's a big fiberglass pool. You dig a hole, throw it in, put concrete, you're done. It's just so much material, so little labor. So there's no perfect sequence on that, but there is, like, say you do, like for us, excavation, utilities, boulders, like an excavation job, you go dig a basement and backfill it. There's the only material you have is maybe a little bit for the utilities ran in, a little bit of rock, but you could be, digging the footings and digging a pond for 3 days and there's no material. You know what I mean? So it's so, there's no perfect sequence, but if you're like 33% material or less, and then 33% covers labor and overhead, then you're left with around 30% profit. That's kind of like our goal. So like total revenue, if your material, labor, and overhead is 70% or less, then you're doing all right. That's kind of what we plan for, is 33, 33, 33. If that makes sense.
Yeah, for
one thing on hourly work, this is just my opinion, but we've done hourly work. Like same thing when we started, like, I don't know what, so maybe hourly is the way to go. So we do, hourly grading. I'll come grade your yard, $200 an hour, however long it takes. And we did that for me like the first year and a half. But now we realized like we don't do a single thing hourly now. I can't stand hourly work, to be honest. Because like you said, you give them a number, 200 an hour, and like, oh, that's so expensive. But yeah, I have $100,000 skid loader and $150,000 excavator that I'm using here. And then so my thing is that it just doesn't work. For one thing, you as a contractor, you're never going to make more than 200 an hour. If that's what you're charging, you're never going to make more than that. You're going to estimate 20 hours. It takes 25, and then someone is really upset because they only whatever. Then there's always, oh, well, we clocked out at 5. Well, your guys actually rolled out at 4:45, whatever. So like, honestly, I don't like it. I think that you'll barely ever cover the bills, if even that, because you're never going to make double that with that machine. If you're only charging 100, you're never going to get 400. If you told someone 400 an hour, like, it's not going to. So it's just like I feel like it just caps yourself. Like you're never going to do better than that. And then when it breaks down, then what? Who's paying for it then? Then you're on the job for 4 hours fixing it, and you're only billing 4 hours that day. You're not even covering your bills. So like there's, what I mean? There's so many variables. What we do is we will do this scope of work for this much, regardless of what happens. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and in the end it balances out and we do it right. And there's no one cares how long it takes. When they're paying 20 grand for a job, they couldn't care less if you're there for a day and a half, 2 days, or a week. As long as the end result is what you said it would be, and all the details are perfect, and you did everything right. You said you'd put a foot of sand under the slab of the house, and you did. Like, as long as you do everything that you say you're going to do, then time doesn't matter. Get in there, get it done as quick as you can, and move on. We give our foreman incentives, so we bid everything by the day. This job's 3 days, that's 2 days, that's 8 days. So the foremen know that going into it, and when they get the jobs done, on the estimated days, then they get an extra $200. Sometimes they get it easily, because it bid, maybe a little long and everything went great. And other times they struggle to get it. But so it gives them incentive to put some pep in their steps, I'd say.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Can we jump into the specifics here?
Yeah, so I had a job. So I know that this is one like excavation job that's all over the country is digging basements. Go in a neighborhood, there's 60 lots and there's 60 basements to dig, and it's in the city. So there's, sewer water connect. It's stubbed in off the main on the road. So that's, 20 feet into the lot, dig the foundation, come back when the concrete guys are done, backfill it and run the sewer and water in. So I have the numbers here. This is a builder, really good builder, just down to earth guy. Been doing it for 20 years, lots of integrity, pays right away, like awesome builder. I know several people that work for big nationals like OWNR, Pulte, um, DR Horton. And do you have any of those builders in your area, like nationals that just build huge neighborhoods?
No, we don't because we're in yeah, most of our developers are all local guys.
Nice, that's good. So this is kind of like production excavation of basements, because I know most people have this kind of anywhere in the city, I guess, like any big Denver, I'm sure you have this. So this is kind of like our numbers, and it's super competitive. It's super tight. Most people want to do it because not a lot of management. You have 50 basements to dig, one a week for throughout the year with that one builder. It's just bam, bam, bam. Hey, go here now. Go off the set of plans. It's not a lot of management. It's not rocket science. It's just digging dirt. It's moving dirt, small amounts, but a lot. It's gotta do that scale to make money at it. But so this is one. It's 5 minutes from our shop. It's a great builder to work with. There's some lookouts and there's some slab on grades. This one is a slab on grade. It's a little mini twin home. It's 38. I have written down. There are 3,400 square feet in the ground, and 4 foot footing. So it's not that much digging. It's just scrape off the black dirt, dig down for the 4 foot footings, and you're good to go. A really good guy. This is like the variable. I don't think most people realize the difference in like operator efficiency. I can go here. I've done a bunch of these. So I can go here and I can dig this thing by myself in 3 hours with the same machine, a 140 and a skid loader. I can go dig this thing. I'd show up there at 7 a.m., be out of there by 11, just me. And then you send 2 other guys there that have done several, quite a few too, and they're done at 2. And it's like, and they have 2 guys. Like that is the difference in some, the operator basically just knowing what to do, keeping a really quick pace, bam, 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 not on their phone, just getting it done. Like that's a matter of 3 man-hours versus what 11, 3, 6, 12 hours. Like that's a huge difference. 12 man-hours versus 3. 2 guys for 6 hours or one guy for 3. Like same equipment, same exact job. It's like, but that's where when you're bidding, you have to know your crew's ability and speed. That's a huge difference. We did the exact same job in 3 hours versus 12. You know what I mean? Like that's a massive variable there. So to be good at these, to make money, you got to be really quick. You got to know them. You got to be quick in and out. But this is a 3,400 square foot in-ground slab on grade. It's a total twin home, so you got to run 2 sets of sewer and water in, one on each end. But we have these at $11,400, and it's copper service. Do you have any copper service out there, or if you haven't done a lot in the city, is it poly water lines?
Yeah.
Is it copper or poly?
Poly.
Poly, yeah. Poly's the best. So this one it's old school city. There's still copper. So it's a little more of a pain to deal with. You got to flare the ends and hook up. And so it's a little more of a pain. But this is how we break down a job like this. This is competitive. This is like 12% margin. Everything goes pretty good, maybe 15 max. But we have it at 11,400. We have labor at 66,700, and then the copper at 1,300, PVC at 1,200, and the rock, radon rock, 4 inches underneath the living spaces at 2,190. So it depends a lot on your area, on what you're paying for your rock, what you're paying for your pipe. I think as a contractor, you need to do your due diligence to not shop around and take the guy at $1 or less all the time, but you need to check all your local resources and make sure you're getting the best deal. Make sure that you're over here selling it for 20 a ton. Well, this guy's selling it for 35. Is it any different? Is it any better? Make sure that you're getting the best deal in your area so that you can basically transfer that to the customer to be competitive. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where we're at. With this, it's 11,400 total, and we spend a half a day digging it. We have planned, and a day to do the backfill and the hookup. that's a full day, and then we'll make about 15%. So this is basically how we bid every single job. Like people ask, how do you bid a job? My answer is the same every single time. You take your material, typically mark that up 10% on a commercial job, 30% on a residential, and add about 10% overage because you always have some extra. So you add about if you need.
To cut out there a bit. We're having a little bit of Wi-Fi struggle. So can you state the percentages again on commercial and residential?
Yeah, so on commercial, we mark material up about 10%, and on residential about 30. And you want to plan for like at least 10% overages. If you have 100 feet of water line, you want to charge about 110. That's what we do anyway, 120, depending on the role and everything else. So about 10% overages to make sure you have a little extra, and then charge 30% extra for material, markup, and then 10% on the commercial. And then this is how we bid the job. Every job is the same. We have our daily rates for each crew. The excavation crew is a little more because they have more heavier equipment than a landscape crew that has a skid and maybe a mini skid and a truck and a trailer. So we break it up by the crew. But our daily overhead for like landscape, this includes labor overhead and about 30% profit on all that. It's $4,200 a day. And then so you have that $4,200 a day plus any material. So if you have, if we're just going to grade a yard, all the materials on site, which would be 1 day grade a yard, it's going to be $4,200, and that covers our overhead, labor, and then, like I said, 30% profit on that. So this excavation job, if it's going to be a day and a half day to dig it, and a day to backfill and hook up, that's how we have it all the material. All that's marked up 30% because it's residential, and then we have a day and a half of labor. So I think the excavation is like $4,500 or $4,600 per day for overhead and labor, and then profit. So it's that, times 1.5. So, and then as long as everything goes close to according as planned, then you do all right. Your bills are covered. But for everyone, that varies so much. Like I know a guy who's just starting, he doesn't have any bills, doesn't have any overhead, he doesn't have very much equipment, runs it out of his house, has a truck, has a skid. Like for him to charge the same, like he would make a killing, but he's not gonna get done as quick. He doesn't have the back end, scheduling and the back end power. So like, he's not as efficient, but he can also do it for less. So there's so many variables, for us, maybe we can do all right at that. But for you, if you're a union or you have more big equipment, like you got to charge double that. So don't take other people's numbers and plug and play into your business. Unless it's the same, but more in like a different area, everything, there's so many variables. So you got to figure out what you're paying your guys, what your insurance is, if you have an office, and, charge accordingly for your numbers, not, someone else. But it's kind of the same sequence, if you have a truck that costs $100,000, divide that payment, that amount, and the fuel and the maintenance you're going to have for the year. Say that truck's going to cost $30,000 that year, divide that by the working days that you're going to have on a job. For us, it's like we plan for 7 months. So it's 100, or say 30,000 that year, divide that by 7 months, 20 working days a month. And that tells you, okay, I charge whatever it would be, $80 a day for that truck on the job. And that's how we figure it all out. And it's the same with everything, your office, your insurance, however much your insurance is $10,000 or $150,000 a year, divide that by how many days you're working and charge that. And that's how you figure it out. It's the same exact sequence for every fixed bill that you have. That makes sense?
Got it. Yeah, totally makes sense.
So that's how we do it. That's what we've learned. When you put an hourly rate, like you said, it gets to be so high, and then they're nickel and diming on time and everything else. So that's why we've always just done lump sum, and we have no issues. No one ever says, "Whoa, it was $20,000, but it only took me 2 days." Like no one. They don't care. They don't care if it takes a week. They don't care if it takes 2 weeks and you don't make any money on it. They just want the job done. They're paying X to get X, and it works out. So I do know, like, it is tough because like you're paying our guys hourly, but we're getting paid lump sum. So when it takes longer, that's how, we're not getting more money if it takes longer. So that's where sometimes they just don't, stuff happens. You know how it is, that you a little underestimate it. You plan for everything to go too good and it takes a little bit longer. There's a flat tire on the way. They didn't get there till 9 instead of getting there at 7:30. And then they blew a hydraulic hose, and then they misread the plan and you got to rework 10 feet of this wall or something. Like that stuff happens in the real world, and it just comes right out of your profit because you're not going to charge anymore because of that. So but like I said, in the end, you can't just look at one job and say, okay, we got to charge double. Like we look at several and you look at averages, and okay, at the end of the year, we did 18%. It's not perfect, but that's good. And now we know, we got, it's the base variables labor. We got to charge a little more or add a little more time. And like, if you think it's going to be a half day, you got to most times charge a full day, because by the time the guys get cleaned up and get back to the shop, it's 3 p.m. You're not going to go to their job at 3.
So whenever you're doing, well, thank you for sharing this, by the way. So on your excavation bids, you're not including anything for final grade in that bid. It's literally just the dig and the backfill.
Yeah, so this, I know most of the time, majority of the time, they are going to want a final grade. We backfill and we get pretty close to finished grade anyway. But then this particular builder, sometimes their sod guy will just, we get the grade close, like we get it within a few inches. And then sometimes their sod guy will come and just spread a little black dirt and hold to like the finished grade. But typically they do want a finished grade included, and that's always like you dig it, and then that could be 6 months later, even a year later, or sometimes 3 months later if they're really busting it out. But usually for a small residential around here, we don't really target finished grading, because like most guys will do it for like $1,000 a year. It's a couple hours, a guy in the skid to get it dialed in. So if we do go back and do them for this particular builder, I think it's about $1,000, and we try to line like 3, 4, 5 of them up at once and just go through and do them all. And then one guy in the skid, maybe 2. And that's it. So this particular one doesn't include final grade.
Efficiency wise, because you're pouring foundation walls on this, right? Because it's a basement.
The concrete guys are, yeah. These particular ones are just slab on grade, so it's just a footing and like a 42-inch wall.
Oh,
it's like an 8-inch footing and then a 42-inch wall and then a slab. That's all.
Okay. Whenever, like, efficiency wise, as an excavation contractor, this is the thing that like I've put a lot of thought into, and this is the reason why we haven't jumped to this yet. I'm not saying I'm opposed to it. It's from an efficiency standpoint. How do you manage that lag time for the concrete guys?
That's
like, what do you do with your equipment?
Yeah, that's a great question, and this is exactly why everyone has an excavator that they dig basements with that doesn't need a permit to move, because the quickest I've seen is like a week. If you dig it on Monday, you might be able to come back the next Monday. If it's, if the guys are really quick and they're there Monday afternoon when you're done digging it, or first thing Tuesday morning, that happens. Like, we're still finishing up digging one corner and they're already started on the other sometimes, which is great because they'll be back quick. But basically, is if you're busy, I mean, you show up with the ideal world, you show up with a truck, a dump truck and a tag trailer, or a tractor trailer with a step deck, and you roll up, the guys dig it, and they load it back up and go to the next one. That's ideal. Sometimes some of these neighborhoods where this is what a lot of guys are, if it's a big neighborhood, like I said, 50, 100 houses, they'll dig one, go right down the street, backfill, hook up another one, go dig another one. Like, I know some guys that just like live in these neighborhoods in the summer, like these massive ones. Like, I just interviewed a guy that's what he's done for like 5 years, production, excavating, has 2, 3 neighborhoods, and he's in those all summer long because they're doing so many. For us, we don't do that big. We don't do a ton of big production. We have builders that do, 10, 20 houses in the neighborhood a year, and then we do some custom. So it pretty much boils down to roll up, dig it, load up, go to the next one. The only way the excavator is ever sitting there is if we're slow, if we don't have somewhere else to be with that machine or whatever. But typically, it's load, pull up, unload, and then do the job, load it back up, go to the next one. So depending on timing and everything, but in the busy season, that's typically what we do. So that's why like everyone runs an excavator that's like 20 ton or less, because you don't need a permit to move it. It's just quick in and out.
Yeah.
Around here anyway.
So the challenge with the excavation business around here, in my opinion, is all our homes are customs. They're big customs, and the contractors want, like, the excavation contractors around here fulfill everything. You dig it. Mostly everything is septic. So most of the you bid it as a whole package, right? Yep. Do you guys do custom homes?
Yeah, we do quite a few, and those we love because one we just did, it was a big walkout, and it's on a 5-acre acreage lot. Those we love because there's so much more work there. We go in there, we clear an acre, we haul away all the stumps, we put all the tops in the pile, and they burn them. We do a long driveway, like this is a $50,000, $80,000 job, $100,000, depending on, what your material is and where it's at. But like one we just did is like, $60,000, and it was clear an acre, not super heavily wooded, but, decent amount of trees, and then dig the basement, come back, backfill it, do the radon rock in the living areas, build the driveway, do the septic. So like those we like because it's so much more in one spot. So something like that, you'd go and try to do as much as you can the first time, and usually do the septic when you come back to backfill. But those are nice because there's a little more room for those. Like the production homes, everything's so tight. Custom homes I found around here, there's a couple builders that build 3-4 a year that we work with that are nice because like they're willing to pay a little more. They know they're getting a good service. They know that we're going to be there when we need them. They're not just like, okay, we're doing 100 of these, so can you lower your price $123? Like that's how the production is. It's so tight. Where this is more kind of bid it for what you need and are willing to pay for it. So we love the one-off custom homes. Around here, it's a lot of lakes. Minnesota, we have like 12,000 lakes, so it's a lot of custom homes on the lake. There's not too many production homes on the lake, so there's a lot of that around the lakes that we'd like to do. It's easier to make 30% on that than a production, neighborhood.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So what you know now about running the business you run, would you rather come and do all the service associated with that one home versus 100 of those track homes at production?
Yeah, it really comes down to personal preference because personally, I don't like the production because it's not about quality. It's really not about quality. It's not about doing a nice job, keeping the street clean, having a nice construction entrance. It's about getting in and out of there as quick as you can. There's no attention to detail. They don't rake in any of the corners. They just throw the rock in. They just throw everything everywhere and leave. Basically, they don't sweep off the sidewalk. Like these guys, because they're not making enough. The builder isn't paying for good quality service, so they're not getting one. I drive through these neighborhoods, and it's just like, wow, like this stuff is a disaster. It's so dirty. It's so messy. There's no attention to detail. Basically, it's like run in and out, go to the next one. Like that's how it is. So with the custom home, it's a totally different ballgame. So I would say full service, I think is good because it helps for like the custom homes. It helps the builder. He doesn't want to get someone he doesn't want to have to ask the concrete guy to do the radon rock, or have to get another guy for the septic, or he doesn't want you to dig the basement and have someone else build the driveway. Like I think I would say full service works good for us on those custom homes, and it works good for the general as well. Just kind of getting a package deal and not having to work with 3 guys and just work with 1.
Yep, understood. Okay. Well, we're at the hour mark. So I'll wrap this up here. Anything else you want to share on that before I stop the recording?
I would just say I can't stress enough about job costing, tracking your fuel, tracking your time. Like we track all our guys' hours and categorize it to each job. So they have to, they clock into each individual job that they're on. They have to put daily progression notes, and at the end of the day, so we can track, if that was a good, how that day went, and if they don't meet the daily goals, why, what do we got to improve on, what happened. So just job costing is crucial because the only way you know what to charge is if you know exactly what's costing you. And if you're not job costing, you don't really know what everything that's costing you. You don't know when it all adds up, your fuel and your insurance and everything all adds up. So you need to know what that is. So job costs, pay close attention to the work that you're doing, how much it's costing you, and then you'll know how to accurately bid going forward. So spend a little bit of time. It's not rocket science. It's just putting together all the expenses, adding it on, a spreadsheet. You can do it in Jobber. You can do it anywhere. So just figure out what's costing you, and then you'll know what to charge and be profitable, because none of this stuff is worth doing for free for any amount of time. I mean, you're in this to make money. You have to be able to afford a mistake. You have to be able to afford equipment that works. So you got to be charging accordingly. Otherwise, it's just not going to work long term.
How do you guys do it? Do you do it in Jobber?
Jobber has a feature. We've looked at it. We haven't done it yet. We basically do it on like an Excel spreadsheet. You have the total. You take everything from the job, all the total, all the material, and then you take all the receipts and put in the actuals. Okay, we estimated this. This is actually what it costs. And then you have a percentage at the end.
Who's responsible for that?
Marlena does that. What she usually does is you don't have all of your expenses in until sometimes a week or 2 later, or even a month. Like, you go buy a bunch of pipe and sometimes they don't send the bill for 3 weeks. So you got to make sure you have all the expenses there, but she gets basically all the receipts and then categorizes it all to there. So we usually do it like once a month for like the previous month's work, if that makes sense.
Okay. Sounds good, man. All right, I'm going to stop the recording. Thanks so much for doing this.